Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello there, my name is Dave Jackson, and I'm the host of Tales from the Backlog podcast, back for yet another episode of Side Quests. I'm going to keep doing these until Matt tells me I can't do them anymore. So, you may know me, like I said, from Tales from the Backlog podcast. It is a Backlog Games deep dive analysis podcast. Every week is a different game and a different guest, where we deep dive a game with no spoilers for a while, and then we do a hard spoiler break. We yell at you that spoilers are coming. We don't yell, we talk nicely. And then after that, we do our story discussion, full spoilers, things like that. So that's Tales from the Backlog, and I'm here on Side Quests to talk about a game that I could try to make fit my podcast format, but it doesn't really fit all too well, because it is a pure puzzle game. Today, I'm going to talk about Picross 3D. Picross 3D was developed by HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo in 2010 for the Nintendo DS. And it is a Picross puzzle game, otherwise known as nonogram puzzles. It is those puzzles where you have usually a two-dimensional puzzle with numbers on the top and on the side telling you how many blocks you need to fill in this puzzle. And you work through, this line only has 9 blocks. It's 11 blocks wide, so you figure that out. You can eliminate some of the blocks or fill in some of them automatically, basically. And when you're all done with the puzzle, you get a nice little picture. And there are a bunch of really good Picross games out there. There are lots of licensed Picross games. There was a Pokemon Picross game that never got translated, but you can find a translation of. There's Mario Picross on the NES, I think it was. There's a wonderful Konami Picross game on mobile that's free. It's awesome. Picross games are some of my favorite types of puzzles. They are also my depression game. If I'm too depressed and I just want to pass the time, I'll throw on a podcast and play Picross for hours until I fall asleep, basically. So I love this type of puzzle, and Picross 3D adds a third dimension into it. It adds another axis of puzzles. So instead of getting a flat block where you need to fill in the shape, you get a cube, and you have the numbers on all of the sides of the cube telling you how many in that row, that column, or whatever the secret word is for the z-axis. I don't know, but it tells you how many you need to keep. There's something else about Picross 3D that really appeals to me too. When this third dimension is added, you are no longer filling in a picture out of a blank. You are chipping away at this block until you have almost like a little sculpture of something in there. And this reminds me of when I was a kid and I watched Jurassic Park for the first time, and I automatically wanted to be a paleontologist. Anyone in my generation who watched Jurassic Park as a kid can probably relate to that, like, wow, that movie was awesome. I was probably too young to watch that, but it was awesome. And now I want to study dinosaurs for the rest of my life. And so my parents would get me these little kid paleontology kits where there was like these plastic bones, covered in dirt or rocks or whatever. And you'd get the dirt wet and you'd scrape it away. You'd chip some of this away here. You'd brush some of it away here. And then you'd get these, fake dinosaur fossils out of it. Picross 3D reminds me of that because you start out with this block, and using the stylus on the DS, you rotate the block around. And then there's 2 controls. If you hold up on the D-pad, you'll break blocks. And if you hold right, you'll mark them as safe. So that you can't break them anymore. And every time you break a block, it has this really satisfying tactile crunch to it, and you're breaking these pieces of it off. And at the end, you have a little 3-dimensional sculpture, a little 3-dimensional object. It could be an animal, it could be a person, it could be a letter. And you go through the game, there's different difficulties. There are feels like there's hundreds of puzzles in here. And some of the puzzles have, I think they all have like a 30-minute time limit. But in order to get good scores on all the puzzles, you need to finish them within like a good time limit and make no mistakes. And so each level is going to have like 10 of these puzzles, and you need to you can get up to 3 stars in each puzzle. You may need to get, 18 stars in order to move to the next, set of levels. So there is a time pressure to it, but I found it to be pretty forgiving, and you get the hang of how Picross works. You get the hang of how it works in 3D, and there are so many puzzles that it has a really, really great difficulty ramp up as you go. And there are so many puzzles, and the time limit, is up to 30 minutes, or maybe you need to finish it in under 10 minutes to get 3 stars. But, 10 minutes times hundreds of puzzles, it feels like there's a lot of game here. There's a lot of puzzles. So if you're like me and you want to play Picross 3D when you're on a plane ride, or like I said before, if I don't want to do anything else, can't do anything else, and I just want to pass the time, I can just sit and play hours of Picross 3D, and it feels like the game is almost endless. And I'm on some very difficult levels much later in the game now, but I still love it. It's really, really good. It also has this really soothing music that plays on repeat. It's catchy, but it's at the same time, it's reserved. So it doesn't get in the way of your thinking, but it will worm its way into your head. And being a DS game, as you're solving the puzzles, you do have that tactile feel of using the stylus and the touchscreen to rotate the puzzle around. You have a mechanic where you can see inside of the block. You can, make some of the rows and columns invisible so that you can see the inside of it. So you get in this loop of you check the horizontal axis, you mark everything that you can, and then you rotate it, you check that vertical axis, and you check everything you can. And then you rotate it the other way, and you check that secret third axis that I don't know the name of. I'll just call it the Z-axis. And you check everything you can. Then you break the blocks away that you can, and then you start the process over. And then, at least that's my process for solving these. And then at the end, you've got a nice little letter W or something like that, or a puppy. That's what's on the cover of Picross 3D, is one of these puzzles being broken apart, and inside there is this very blocky puppy. So that's Picross 3D. At its heart, it's a very simple game. Picross puzzles are simple. They're very simple to understand. Anyone can pick one of them up, and within a couple minutes, you'll be like, oh yeah, I understand how every single puzzle from now on is going to work. As they get harder, you'll learn more strategy for how to deal with more difficult and complex shapes inside of it, but it never stops being satisfying to play, especially Picross 3D with that, that crunch when you break away the blocks to slowly chip away at the puzzle and reveal that thing inside. It's super satisfying, and then you get that awesome feeling when you solve the puzzle, as all puzzle games should give you. So, simple game. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Please play Picross 3D. It's wonderful. If you are someone who has a DS and you're looking for physical copies, it's not that expensive. So you can go out and get the physical copy of Picross 3D. And for everybody else, it is easy to find. So I highly recommend playing Picross 3D. I always have tons of ideas for games to talk about on side quests here, but I wanted to make sure I talked about Picross 3D because it's something that I've been playing a ton of recently, and I don't know, I love it. So thank you all for listening. Once again, my name's Dave Jackson. I'm the host of the Tales from the Backlog podcast, where every episode is a deep dive on a game that might be sitting in your backlog with no spoilers for a while. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Search Tales from the Backlog. And, as always, happy gaming.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too, until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
and Jacob McCoy.
With many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Crossplay Conversations debuts on August 1st with brand new episodes hitting every other Tuesday. Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers
and happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.